All right, so what are the things that are going to change here? Well, not much, right? The first thing we need to do is make sure that we're declaring a variable for any ball objects. So let's go ahead and say that here we're going to declare a variable for a ball object. All right? Then inside the setup, the global setup block of code, we're going to get rid of xpos and ypos just in one moment. But before we do that, basically after the size, what we're going to do is instantiate a ball object. So up here, what we're doing is that there's going to be a variable that's going to store a ball. And then down below, we actually have to create it, right? We'll instantiate it so that it can be used in the display window and move each frame. All right, so that's actually going to use this. That's why we're not deleting it quite yet. And then down below, we're defining the background color. That stays. But here, we're not going to call to the bounce function, but we're going to call to the main update method within the class. All right? Any objects that we have to update them. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute these 3 lines of code, and we'll be ready to see if it works. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is I need to declare a variable, and again, in processing, every variable needs to have a type assigned. So instead of an integer or a float, this is going to be a ball type of variable. And notice how it's a capital B. Those are, again, capitals are reserved for objects. So ball, let's call this my ball, semicolon. All right? Now we've saying to the computer, make sure you reserve a little bit of memory to store this ball object I'm going to give you in a minute. All right? Then down below here where we have instantiate ball object, we have to go ahead and do that. So we're going to say that my ball equals a new ball defined by width over 2 and height over 2. So we can get rid of these 3 lines here. Okay. Now I missed a part of what we were supposed to produce here, which is one more, the one method here, right? If you remember the anatomy of the code, we forgot the constructor, right? This is the way for us to have the sketch create or instantiate an actual instance of the class, right? So here, this is going to be the constructor, and this one's pretty easy for our ball. We have to say that whenever we create a ball, open parentheses, we need to supply how it's going to start, right? So we'll say float underscore x, comma, float underscore y. Close parentheses, open curly brackets, and then close curly brackets. So here, these are the properties that are going to be used when we first define a specific instance of the ball class, right? And what we're doing is we're going to pass it 2 arguments, a starting x position and a starting y position. And then we're just going to make sure that we define xpos, which is our class property, equal to underscore x, and ypos equal to underscore y. So I'm going to hit save, and now we can actually create a ball object. And that's going to come from this particular line of code, right? This is creating a new ball. And its name is my ball. All right, then the last thing we need to do is every frame, we need to make sure that we update the ball object. So we're going to say my ball dot update, open and close parentheses, semicolon. So this little construction, right, object variable dot method or property is a way to access any of the sub-level elements that define our class. So if we did myball.xpos, that would give us the current position, or dot radius, .rad would give us the radius of that object, right? So we can access any of the properties of the ball object or its methods by using this dot construction. So if I hit save and run, we're not seeing our ball. Let's double check what we have here. Aha! In our update, we have move, bounce, drag, but we don't have render. So we make sure we call to all of our secondary methods as necessary. So there's our ball object. Width over 2, height over 2. I think I missed a little typo there. There we go. Now, again, this isn't doing anything different than the last file yet, but it is, I think, more clearly organized, right? We're going to be using an object called myBall. We're going to create it in the setup block of code. Inside the draw block of code, we're going to update it. Pretty clear. Then everything that is necessary to what that ball is going to do, that's all back here in the ball class, right? So we don't have to worry about that too much whenever we're just opening our file and taking a look at what is actually supposed to happen, right? So that is, again, encapsulation. Now, where does the power lie? Well, whenever I want to, I can create another ball, right? This is going to be a football, my football, right? I can create that in a different location. So I'm going to instantiate the ball object. So my football equals new ball. I'll put this one at the same location in the width, but I'll put it at 30 pixels from the top. And then I'll update the football in the same way I did the myBall. So now I have two, right? And I didn't have to double all of my code, right, and make new variables, etc. But I've used the class as a way to create multiple versions of the same type of object, right? So this is where it gets really fun and becomes very useful in terms of being able to code your behaviors. Okay, so that's a big topic. That's kind of the longest exercise that we had to go over for the course today. So let's go ahead and take a second and answer any questions you might have about objects and classes. Okay, so one question that we had was, why are you calling the primary method within the class update? And why are you calling the methods internal to that secondary, and why do they have the specific names that they do? Well, update is I think generic enough that we can think about it relative to time, and that's really what's happening each time that we are using that method in the draw block of code, right? Every frame this is being executed, so we're asking the ball to update. What happens within the update method is everything else, right? But we don't need to really see that in the main tab of our processing sketch, right? As an alternative, we could do all that here. We could say that my football will move, and then my football will bounce, then my football, etc., etc., etc. But we can use the structure of our class to actually encapsulate all of that internal to this part of the class definition, right? And kind of one thing to note about that is that's great in terms of not being able to see, not having to see what's specifically going on in the main tab. But what that does leave you open to is potentially forgetting to put your method in the update method after you've created it, as I did with the render, right? I created the method, but I didn't see anything because I didn't have it inside the update method. So you have to ensure that all the things that you want to happen are happening inside of here, which is the main primary method. Okay. All right, so there's no other questions, so let's go ahead and go on to the next file, and this will become more clear as we go, for sure.